Kano, aloha pumehana. I will call to order the meeting of the OHA Committee on Beneficiary Advocacy and Empowerment. Mahalo nui hai lama for providing the pule earlier and in the BAE, our committee meeting as well. I understand that we have one excused absence. Trustee Akina. Nathan, may I please have a roll call for attendance?
Trustee Alapa. Trustee Galatario. Board Chair Lindsay. Trustee Souza. Board Vice Chair Trask is excused. Trustee Wehe'e.
Present.
Chair Akaka.
Ew.
5 trustees present. We have a quorum.
Mahalo, Nathan.
I'm here too if you guys like add me.
So, sorry, Trustee Ahuna.
Did you call his name?
6 trustees present.
Mahalo, your presence is noted. Mahalo, Trustee Ahuna. All right. Well, I see that your camera is on, and what I was going to share is that all that are joining by video conference, please enable your camera if you're able to do so. All in attendance, we are reminded to conduct ourselves with a decorum and respect. The speaker recognized by the chair during our meetings as set forth in Article 17 on order and decorum of the OHA BOT bylaws. Further, defamatory materials and statements are not to be presented before the BOT or its committees. I will now call upon our administrator to introduce administrative staff joining us today.
Mahalo, Chair. Joining us today, we have our Chief Operating Officer, Kehao Pu'u, Chief Financial Officer, Ramona Hink, Endowment Director, Ryan Lee, Interim Corporation Counsel, Everett Ota, Interim Senior Legal Counsel, Nichi Ozawa, Senior Director of Strategy and Implementation, Elena Farden, Senior Director of Wine Cultural Affairs, Ailama Farden, Compliance and Enforcement Manager, Kai Markel, Lead Compliance Specialist, Kamakana Ferreira, Director of OEV Wellbeing and Aina Momona, Ku'ike Kamakea Ohelo, Director of Education and Culture-Based Learning, Ku'ule Anuhea Awo-chan, Director of Economics and Business Resilience, Poni Askew, Interim Public Policy Manager, Michelle McCoy, Interim Information Technology Manager, Kevin Chalk, and IT Systems Engineer and Administrator, Kelsey Wade. Mahalo.
Okay. We will now move on to Roman numeral number 2, which is the approval of the minutes. And there is a notice, the 72-hour rule pursuant to OHA BOT Operations Manual, Section 49, shall be waived for distribution of new committee materials. Nathan, are there any testifiers on this item?
Yes, Trustee, we have one testifier. The committee calls Kiani Rollins Fernandez.
Okay. Is she in person or virtual? Virtual. Okay. Aloha, Kiani.
Aloha.
Aloha.
I see my audio working. I don't see a camera icon. Is that not your folks' practice?
Kalamaya, we're gonna just check on the back end on that.
Aloha.
Aloha. Aloha.
Okay, I'll proceed. Aloha mai, o wau o Kiani, Maui County Council Member Kiani Rollins Fernandez. Mahalo for this opportunity to testify on the approval of meeting minutes. I was asked to provide testimony on agenda item 3B today, but while looking at the agenda, the long list of meeting minutes for approval caught my eye. I've never seen this done before. It looks like it's a cleanup situation, so mahalo, I guess, for addressing the backlog of minute approvals. However, as a council member governed by the same state's statute, HRS 92, affectionately referred to as our Sunshine Law, I am very familiar with its requirements and the practice of posting draft minutes within the 40 stipulated days is not something I was familiar with. So I checked the statute for guidance, but there was nothing on draft minutes being posted. So I called and spoke with the attorney of the day at the Office of Informational Practices, OIP. And don't worry, I didn't file a complaint or anything. I was just asking for their guidance. She informed me that Sunshine Law does not require a body to approve meeting minutes. That would be a governing document like rules or bylaws. She clarified the legal question was whether the minutes that were posted to meet the 40-day deadline met the criteria of either written minutes or summary minutes, which is HRS 92-9B. Summary minutes has very specific criteria that it needs to be followed. And then written minutes must contain sufficient detail of the discussion. And so what was posted within the 40 days are more characterized as summary minutes, because after you approve the minutes, that's when all the detail comes in, which is wonderful. Mahalo for doing that. However, summary minutes must include a link to the recording of the meeting. So in order to comply with Sunshine Law for the meeting minutes within the 40 days, the draft, what you folks call draft minutes, must also include a link, a hyperlink to the recording of the meeting. And each of the motions and votes must also have a timestamp. And she sent me a handy document to reference, and I'm happy to send that over. So I also looked for your folks' bylaws because I wanted to find out what the approval process is. And the bylaws were not on the OHA website. And so I called OHA, and the person that answered the phone, very friendly, very nice, great to have, she did not have access to the bylaws. And so I had to wait until later on in the day, and I did receive a call back with the meeting minutes. And when I asked when the last time the the bylaws, OHA bylaws were approved, it wasn't since March 2020. And I see that on October 16th, RM committee did also have it in its package. So that's actually where I first started referencing. And then I saw that the requirement for a testimony with a 72-hour notice. So all of Article 9, Section F 1 through 3 should be visited so that it can be updated and comply with other laws. And I would, so last two things, I looked in your bylaws to see when there would be some kind of mandated review. As a county council, we review our council rules every new term. And so we adopt them every 2 years. So I would recommend some kind of protocol in adopting your bylaws, like, every 2 years or every 4 years or something. 4 years is kind of long, but and then there isn't any mandated review, so that might be good to review. And then I think that is, and then having the bylaws easily accessible for the public on your website would be amazing. Mahalo for this opportunity to testify.
Mahalo nui, mahalo. And I just want to also share that none of the minutes were summaries, and they were word for word. And mahalo for looking into all this. Mahalo Kiani. Thank you.
The draft minutes are not, when it's approved, all the detail are in it, but when it's posted for the 40-day requirement, it does not have the level of detail that you're approving today.
Oh yeah, ours were all word for word what they were online and what we have in front of us. Yeah.
What you're approving today is, but
Yes.
when you do it for the 40 days, you put draft minutes, and the draft minutes need to have a link to the recording. Otherwise, because that is not verbatim.
Thank you.
I checked.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. All right. Are there any other testifiers? Okay,
Sorry, no trustee.
mahalo. Okay,
So move.
mahalo.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other? No? Seeing none, can I please have a roll call vote? Oh, did you wanna- Okay, all right. Or, we could do it separately. Yeah, okay. Yeah, trustee Ahuna, what were, trustees? Yes, so what were the ones that you wanted to? Number one? Okay. October 25, 2022, just that one? Okay, all right. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're going to, did you wanna? Yes,
Madam Chair, I request that October 25th, 2022 meeting minutes be bifurcated. For the reasons being that, I was not a trustee here at OHA.
okay,
Mahalo,
thank you. All right, so then we will, I wanna make sure we have this correct, so with the motion. Okay,
Second on that, if somebody got it, I mean, let's
So-
go, man.
yeah, and then is there a second for that bifurcation?
I think he moved his own bifurcate, right? Oh, no, you cannot.
Actually, yeah, a second, okay, mahalo, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Ahuna,
Yeah, is this for bifurcation? Yes.
Aye on the bifurcate.
trustee Galatario. Board Chair Lindsay, trustee Souza,
Aye.
trustee Wahehe,
Yes.
Chair Akaka.
Aye.
6 yes votes.
Mahalo, we will, I will entertain a motion to approve just the October 25th, 2022 minutes.
So move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
It,
Any other one?
it already was moved, right? That's right.
Oh, the 25th meeting. Yes,
Okay, sorry. I thought it was moved
yeah,
already.
just for October 25th. Was there a second? It was second, okay. Can I please have a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
trustee Galatario,
Aye.
Board Chair Lindsay, trustee Souza, trustee Wahehe,
Yes.
Chair Akaka.
Aye.
6 yes votes, motion
Mahalo.
passes.
I will now entertain a motion to approve agenda item 2, item B through Y. Yes. Mhm. Yes. Okay. But I wouldn't, what it was for. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote now for B through Y.
Trustee Ahuna,
So sorry, and I didn't even know what what's going on?
It's the remainder of the minutes that we.
Oh, the remainder of the minutes. All right. Aye.
trustee Galatario,
Aye.
Board Chair Lindsay, trustee Souza, trustee Wahehe,
Yes.
Chair Akaka.
Aye.
6 yes votes, motion passes.
Mahalo. Okay, we will now move on to new business. Letter A, the presentation with Ea Hanau on proposed 2025 bill for increased access and protection of traditional and customary birth practices. Nathan, do we have any testifiers on this item?
Yes, the committee would like to call up Kahala Johnson.
Aloha, sorry. I'll do the next item. I'll wait till the presentations, Paul.
Okay, mahalo. Is there another testifier signed up?
Yes, Rebecca Stewart Botello. Yeah, all virtual.
Aloha, Rebecca.
Aloha, aloha. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes,
Or
we can
see
hear you
me.
clearly. Mahalo.
Okay, fabulous. I'm on an iPad and I don't know if you can see me. Do I just continue? Aloha mai. Okay. I'll just go ahead and okay.
I understand that you are able to turn on your video.
I'm not sure.
Virtual.
I'm accustomed to using the Zoom app, and I had to click on the link that was sent via email, and I can't seem to find any option to show my oh, hold on. Now it is no, ma'am. I am not being able to show my video. I apologize. I am unfamiliar with how to do this via the
That's
link.
okay. If you want to proceed, as we
Yes,
can hear
ma'am.
your voice. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I have been a part of birth work for 24 years. I'm a graduate of Kamehameha Schools and Olelo Hawaii speaker, although I've missed a lot of that in the last 30 years. But for 24 years, I've been serving my community as a doula, as a childbirth educator, and as an apprenticing student midwife. And for many years now, we have been advocating as a large group here in Hawaii and all of the islands for people of Kanaka birth, as well as anyone else, to be able to have all birth choices available to them. And as a childbirth educator, I've taught about 400 to 500 people per year for 20 years. So that's 8,000 to 10,000 people just on the nature of the body and birth, and just operating in the capacity of pastoring my community and someone who just wants to share my mana'o as I continue to learn myself. And we've been able to have many, many families that come back and say, thank you so much for all of your mana'o. But HRS 457J, which is due to sunset in, I believe it is June 30th of 2025. It had that particular licensure law made myself and what I do, as well as my mom, who has served the community for now almost about 50 years in the capacity of a traditionally trained midwife, it's made us all illegal. So we have had many parents over the last 3 to 5 years come and ask us if we can assist them with information or with their actual birth practices. And especially in the last 2 years, we've had to turn everyone away because we are concerned about both civil and criminal penalties that are outlined in the law, or that are made possible by the law. And so we're just looking, I think, I speak for many people, those of us that are birth workers and families in the community that are finding their birth options, the people that they want to have by their side as they birth. And some people don't want assistance, they just want someone there to support them, but we're not being able to do that. And so we're looking for support for Kanaka family and those that are in the community that just want more access to birth advisors, birth kahu, birth just hanau practice, people that do that practice as a traditional method or a religious method, and not to have any kind of a possibility of being dinged by the law. So I think it's been outlined in a number of requests, excuse me, that OHA would perhaps support our bill that continues a licensure program for CPMs and CMs, but adds training pathway that local student midwives can access, because right now what the state has said is that in order for local midwives to get trained quote unquote properly and not necessarily in traditional methods, is that they have to leave the state and they have to go somewhere else to get trained on the continental US or somewhere else in the world. And to that OHA would support exempting cultural practitioners, traditional birth attendants, and extended families from licensure and protect them from criminalization. We believe that it's just really important for every Makuahine to have the right to choose who touches her body or assists her or her family while she's giving birth. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share. I did provide written testimony. I stand on that, and I would like to be open for questions if that's a necessity.
Mahalo.
Mahalo much.
We will now move on to our next testifier. Nathan, can you please come? I believe we have a long list here.
Yes, the next testifier is Makalani Franco Francis.
Mahalo. Makalani. Is there Makalani on? Okay, if she comes back on, then we'll call upon her.
The next testifier would be Pua'o Ele'ili Pinto. No. Oh, okay.
Is there Pua'o Ele'ili Pinto on? Okay, we'll go back to that individual if they come on, or if we're still in the
Okay.
section.
The next testifier would be Dr. Russell Stewart.
Is there Dr. Russell Stewart on? Yes. Aloha.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Aloha.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see any prompts as far as video. Sorry about that. So I'll just speak, and you can listen to my voice. You have to take my word for it that I ironed my Aloha shirt specifically because I thought I was going to be on screen, but that's okay. No problem. So my name is Dr. Russell Stewart, and born and raised here. I'm 73 years old, and I represent Birth Believers and the Trust Birth Education that has been in existence now for close to 25 years. I also speak on behalf of the Kingdom of Hawaii group as its acting Minister of Foreign Affairs since 1993. And I also represent the Ark Christian Church as its founding pastor. Birth Believers and Trust Birth Education were founded by my wife Mari and I. My wife Mari is a trained midwife, been a midwife now for over 40 some years, and has helped countless numbers of women for no charge here in the islands for all that time, with no negative reports. And so as far as Birth Believers go, we were funded and founded by my wife and I, and as a ministry of the church. And as such, that ministry is protected by our church bylaws and biblical authority. And under the Kingdom of Hawaii, just for a little bit of history, Christianity was always the religion of the Kingdom of Hawaii as such, and it was the Hawaiian cultural religion as well, practicing biblical birth practices by midwives. In 1840, the Constitution, the first Constitution of the Kingdom of Hawaii, was enforced that no law would ever be passed that was abhorrent to the biblical scripture, and that includes the religious protection of the biblical office of a midwife as ordained in Exodus chapter 12. The U.S. Constitution also forbids government from interfering in our right to freely practice our religion as we see it in the Bible. We have served the entire community of Hawaii now for over 24 years at no charge. Those who want to forced legislation on our midwives, our church midwives especially, are doing it under the motivation of personal profit instead of just purely helping the community. We have a perfect record of safety and competent training as well. And we do train our own midwives, and we train other midwives, and we have a perfect record of safety for these 20-some years. And our licensing, the licensing of midwives promises neither safety nor competent training. And as a matter of fact, the unfortunate incidences that have happened in the past, many of them are caused by licensed midwives and not by traditional midwives. So I want to just appeal to our legislators to continue to allow us to practice our religion. We are here to help the state. We're not here to fight the state. We are here to help people. We are not here to cause danger. When someone has a medical situation, they are always 100% of the time referred to doctors and hospitals for medical help. Birth in itself is not a medical procedure. It's like pulling out a tooth. You know, you don't go to the dentist to have your children's teeth removed. They just kind of fall out naturally. And so do babies, by the way. And they actually do better without any kind of intervention. So that is all I have to share today. If you have questions, I'm willing to answer them.
Mahalo. With this testimony, we don't have, it's not a back.
You're welcome.
Mahalo.
Thank you very much.
Mahalo for your testimony.
Mhm.
Nathan, next
the-
testifier.
The next testifier is Elijah McShane.
Elijah? I don't see an Elijah here. Next.
The final virtual testifier is Naki'i Ave Ave Kanekoa.
I see Naki Ave Ave on. Aloha.
Aloha.
If you'd like to proceed with your testimony, mahalo.
Aloha.
Aloha.
My name is Naki'abeabe Kanekoa. I am a native Hawaiian descendant. My lineage does come from La'au Lapa'au, different modes of healing here on Maui. Myself personally, I'm involved with the Pacific Birth Collective, Palikeiki training from some of our kind of senior midwives here on island. I think for myself, what is the most pressing is safety. Last year, after the fires, a huge issue was access. And that was coming post-COVID, which was another access issue. Which at that point, really nobody had access to other modes of birth practices. And as another testifier said, that a lot of them were illegal. A lot of us were deemed illegal. But that's not the first time this has happened, right? As Kanaka, we are resilient and we have practiced our methods, you know, in the dark, so to speak, and keeping it in Po, where it is a sacred place. And I appreciate this time to testify that our traditional birth practices have been going for millennia, right? These are time-tested things. Our medicines, the same. Our spiritual practices, the same. As Kanaka, we're constantly fighting to keep these practices, right? My grandparents were not allowed to speak the language, you know, and you guys know these stories, right? We're all familiar with these stories. But we're all in the same fight. So I'm just here to express my thankfulness to you, the board and the trustees, and also to implore you to follow us through. You know, that these people who are sitting there before you and here testifying online are people who are not like myself. These are people who are well trained. These are people who are have been in this system for a long time. And so for me, kind of coming from the outside, as a father, I was allowed to be there at my children's births. It was not a polykeiki, it was a midwife practitioner. But that being said, there really are not enough options for people who are looking outside of the hospital and outside of traditional midwifery, something that is closer to cultural midwifery. But I don't want to exclude anyone, because that's also been a part of this conversation. Is now we're at the point where we're bringing in all these other midwives from different cultural backgrounds who have been here for us as Kanaka Maoli for going on a century now. So I just want to express my thankfulness to everybody, especially the midwives who have not come from Kanaka Maoli origin, who have supported us. And I just want to express that now we are here to support everyone. And this is also bringing, you know, the cultural fight, you know, another avenue of this fight for our culture. And just kind of in closing, the reason why polykeiki is so important, because it is the beginning of all of our cultural practices. Yeah, there are cultural practices that exist within La'au Lapa'au, Hula, Oli, and all of Hawaiiana that begin at birth. So the key for all of our culture begins at birth. And if we are able to retain these practices, not only retain them, but not only have access, but have support, and support from OHA and support from the state, that we can have our practitioners be in a safe place, that we can always access them and we can always be there to help them and give them the support that they need. Again, I just want to thank all of you. Mahalo for this time. Unless you have any questions.
Mahalo. We'll move on to the next testimony, as this is not up for open.
Trustee, we have Pua'o Ele'ili Pinto online now.
Mahalo. Pua'o Ele'ili. Aloha.
Anoike aloha. My name is Pua'o Ele'ili Pinto from Kailua, Oahu, and I'm a worker. I also do La'au Lapa'au and Momilomi, and I'm so honored for this time. Thank you so much for giving this space to share. Kalamai, I missed the first time I was picking up my son. So I started doing birth work since 2014, where I started training with midwife. Illegal and inefficient to practice. I've also birthed 2 babies with them, and they were really crucial parts to me kind of being awoken as a birth worker, especially a Hawaiian birth worker. It was really amazing, safe practices they were teaching me, but I learned really quick. And it really made me wonder, what are Hawaiian birth practices, the medicine they were using, the theories and methods that they were teaching about just didn't seem Hawaiian. So I ended up writing my thesis on Hawaiian birth work, both a master's and a bachelor's degree. And I also was involved with the folks in the back of Kalihi, teaching birthing classes around Hawaiian birthing practices. And it was really clear and evident that what was being taught was not the dominant form. And it was just like so much of a need that both my family, as my sister and I were giving birth, we needed this in our families. And so I really implore you, so I was one of the illegal birth workers, as well as many other people in this room that was illegal from the legislation of HRS 57J. And the legislation right now, if we aren't already dominated by Western medicine, it's even more so because of this law. And so it's way easier for you to get outside. The more I got into genealogy, I found out that in 1867, I had a grandfather who was a kahuna la'aulapa'au, a part of Ahahui la'aulapa'au, who wrote a report about Hawaiian birthing medicine that was helping heal our community in the time of the great epidemics. And all these kahuna were using Hawaiian medicine for foreign diseases. And the way that they were doing it was completely different with what I was understanding what Hawaiian medicine was to be. And so from that work of the Ahahui La'aulapa'au, there was a Hawaiian Board of Health that was created. There was, in that time era, there was the Board of Health that we know it, that was a lot of Western medicine. And there was Kalakaua also created the Hawaiian Board of Health. And so and there was about 300 kahuna that were licensed in that time. And it was like, there's so much paperwork. And if you this history, but that is something that I'm really more interested about learning, because we know from the overthrow and the erasure of the Hawaiian Board of Health that that is not what is the case right now. And from the erasure of that, it's not like we have kahuna, these medicinal experts from the Hawaiian perspective that are readily, easily accessible, and even that our insurance are. And so that's what I'm really curious as doing my genealogy work, that this is where I descend from, that knowledge. Why would I only be supported to go outside of Hawaii to get this? And so there's this erasure of 2 to 3 generations that is really well documented in archives, in the plants that are still growing, and many different sources. And so that's what I'm super interested in is, even though there's a 2 to 3 gap of this type of expert knowledges, what type of support are these practitioners being given? Because we see there's a huge demand. Western medicine has been in Hawaii for almost 200 years, and we can see that it's not helping our people. Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders are the #1 ethnicity to die in postpartum and labor related ailments. And so Western medicine is the dominant form of medicine, and we are the top people that are dying from it. We need more options, and it was really working for us in the Kingdom era. And so I really would love some more support and being able to bring back these practices, because they were really effective, and legislation was one of the main reasons why it was taken out. And so please do whatever you can support this work to be recuperated, and there's so much more that can be done. So thank you again for this time to share, and I'm available for questions if anyone has any. Mahalo again for your time.
Mahalo. We will move on to the next testifier.
We have a person signed up. They didn't say if they were going to testify for this item, but we'd like to call Analoa Helela. If you'd like to speak.
Aloha Hanaloa, is this for item A of new business? Yes. Hanaloa, I see that you're on. Are you able to put your sound on?
Oh, I can't testify at this time, so I'm just listening in.
Okay, aloha.
Thank you. But I would like to say that I support the practitioners that are against the licensure, and I think we need to support traditional healers, particularly traditional Kanaka Maoli birth practices. All of my children, or actually 2 of my children were born at home. 2 were born in the hospital, and the scariest one that happened was the one in the hospital. His twins were born. It was a terrible experience for my wife. That's why the next child she had, she said she was going to have it home, and we had, and it was a beautiful birth, and there was no doctors, no midwives. My wife led me in supporting her, and I think that's just more evidence to show that Kanaka Maoli and people in general are quite capable of birthing their children. And we had emergency plans, as everyone I know who does home birth. So if in the event of any kind of emergency, we had a plan. We had several hospitals close by us, and fortunately, we didn't have to go that route. But anyway, sorry, that's all I can say at this time. And I appreciate the testimony, and I appreciate the time. So mahalo.
I understand we have another virtual testimony.
Yes, this should be the last one. The committee calls Elijah McShane, if you're online.
Yeah. Aloha, Elijah. I see that you're on. Can you turn your sound on? Aloha.
Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Aloha mai kako. Aloha mai kako. I still be here with our beautiful Kiki, who was born at home as well. It's an absolute honor to be here, to really speak on behalf of just the people in our ohana, and each practitioner who has been involved in this process. Through actually having an honor of being Kanaka, it has always been a dream of ours in our family to have a reinstatement of our birth practices that are inherently here in Hawaii. And so for me, through saying so through the handful of experiences of seeing the in hospital births, and to put that into comparison to our experience in our at-home birth in our small little cottage in Haleiwa, the holistic experience is really hard to even compare. And so through having a chance of being a father to an amazing boy and seeing how each of the Kanaka who had played a role in our birth and our birth practices, in our courses, in our classes leading up to the birth, to the at-home birth, and to the care and support of our community for about 8 to 10 months postpartum, it was unrivaled. And so for me as a father, I'm super thankful to even have the opportunity to speak over here and to really speak on behalf of all the Kanaka who have the inspiration of being on board in this canoe, to ensure that these practices that is of our kupuna, right? So, we kind of put really too much of like a Western influence and standard on the practices of our kupuna, even though for the past 200 years, people have tried. Our intention in Koleana in our generation is to do our best to keep these ancient practices, not really even ancient, because our people have hardly ever stopped even doing this, even amidst all the pain, all the persecution in our practices being in our koleiwi. And so as a Kanaka, one, I highly speak in favor of all the birth practices of our kupuna and all of the Kanaka who play a role in holding it down in these practices and keeping them in place for all future generations. Two, to speak as a father, I can absolutely say that I'm hoping I have future children, but I can happily say that in our at-home birth experience, it was an amazing experience that I wouldn't give for the world, and I wouldn't change anything in the process. And three, it's especially in our generation, is the space and time for us as Kanaka to hold space for the practices that our kupuna did, and to ensure that all of the people who practice our culture are always in protection legally and politically, and to not have too heavy compromise on the really, I guess you can say, the institutionalization of our practices, and to have to put all of our home birth workers through a program to earn a license to do this because of the fact that it's hard to teach this even in a course setting. A lot of our midwives, they have aunties, have tutuwahines who have been in this work for 100 years. And it's our job to upkeep and to ho'okule'ana and to holomua in this way. And so in speaking on behalf of my ohana, our keiki, and all the practitioners that I've had an honor to just be in the work with, I appreciate you guys. And I know that in our generation, it's the time to make change. And we trust that all of the electees who are in the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, I hope and I pray that all of you guys have open ears to see how important this work is, because all of the women in our lahui are in charge and are the portal for all the keiki who are kanaka to come into this realm. And I hope and pray that just each of us are able to come together to keep them protected, to keep them safe, and to keep them inspired to keep this work going, because it's the only way to ho'ulu kalahui. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Trustee Dan Ahuna.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come up with some brief comments. I'm very inspired by all the people who have come to speak. And the reason why I say this is because when we think about ea and self-determination and how we can apply that to our future as Kanaka Oiwi, it must include our right to practice our traditional birthing practices. The fact that we have to continuously assert our rights for protections makes it that much more important that we as OHA do whatever we can to protect that right for future generations. The act of hanau specifically is of the utmost sacred, and our wahine should have the right to make choices that align with our cultural beliefs and practices, especially in regards to the birth of the next generation of Kanaka. So it is for the betterment of our people and in the best interest of our children that we should support this bill. So I just want everybody to know, thank you so much. And thank you to all the women who go through all of this. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Do we have any more virtual testifiers signed up? Okay, mahalo. We will now move on to those that signed up to speak in person. Is there an Ainalani Nubal here? Yes, if you could please come up to testify.
Aloha mai kako.
Aloha.
O Ainalani ko'ui noa. No Maui mai au. Currently, I'm living in Makiki, and I'm here to directly address and ask for the support of OHA and the Board of Trustees. Sorry, I got to take a breath. Public speaking is not one of my strong suits, so please bear with me. Thank you so much for hearing this today. I am a mother of two, and I did actually have my children in the hospital, and it wasn't due to choice directly. I actually wanted to have my children at home, and during that time was given the opportunity to work with a non-Hawaiian midwife and a few other people who had knowledge of birth practices, and being able to have the support from those people was huge. It meant the world to me. It gave me the foundation of strength and confidence to be able to birth my children in a Western setting where a lot of your choice gets taken away. And I just wanted to point out a few things. So currently, the licensure laws as they stand are criminalizing traditional birth practitioners under the HRS 457J. I hope that I'm getting those correct. So I strongly ask for the OHA Board of Trustees to support legislation for this Ea Hanau bill, and really take some time to read through what this support means and what it means for Native Hawaiians, and what it also means for non-Hawaiian birth practitioners as well, because we need to work hand in hand with these people. So since my births, I did become a birth attendant, and under the guidance of one of my dear friends, Ki'i Koho'ohanohano, and a woman named Tina on Maui, was given many opportunities to be present at the births of different women who wanted to have their children at home. And it was a safe environment. They were given the right kind of education. These birth practitioners were given so many opportunities to educate themselves in ways that created very safe environments. So the business of birth in the Western sense is taking away the opportunity for women to have a different kind of experience in a more indigenous sense. And it's sad that it has to come to these two systems clashing again. And I just wanted to point out that under 42 US Constitution, Chapter 122, for Native Hawaiian healthcare, the findings are that we need to reaffirm and protect the unique right of the Native Hawaiian people to practice and perpetuate their cultural and religious customs, beliefs, and language. And birth is one of these. And it's really, really important that we really take the time right now to make sure that birth isn't only left in the hands of the traditional Western medical system, and that we need to support these other systems that allow women access to birth practitioners that aren't licensed in a Western, that don't have all the same Western licensure. So anyways, I hope that that was clear, and I appreciate your time today. So mahalo nui.
Mahalo. Okay. Next up, signed up for a testimony is Camille Calamat Andre Perez. Is okay for item B. Okay, sure. I'll move you to that one. Violet Arona. Sure. I see that I'm going off of what it says, what you signed up for, but yeah, if anybody is signed up for A, but they would like to testify instead for B, just you can let me know. Thank you. Ki'i Paho'o Hanohano. That's okay. Yeah, testifiers go in the beginning. Mahalo. Do we have a Dave Kahele? Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha. How's it? Sorry, I get 'em on. All right. Aloha kako. My name is David Kahele, and I am testifying on behalf of my ohana. My grandmother was an unlicensed midwife in the village of Miloli'i on Mokuo Keawe. I have 5 daughters, 1 son, 3 more opunas, and I have been raising them to value, preserve, protect, and perpetuate our Hawaiian culture. This includes traditional Hanau practices with traditional Hanau practitioners. My wife and I were privileged to have a beautiful Well, beautiful home birds with our keiki, and our kikis deserve that as well. As Kanaka Maoli, it is our kuleana, their right, and truthfully, it is all they know because they've attended all our births, just like the old days, before hospitals, before everything was here. On your website, you state our connections to our culture, our land begin with our connections with our own families. I stand here before you today to say that the connection starts at birth. And the way in which keiki are born into this world, you hold the position and power. Help ohana like mine, and I'm humbly asking for your support and protection of this traditional and customary birthing practices of Hawaii. Mahalo for your time. Thank you.
Mahalo. Okay. We have a Sovereign Duarte.
Aloha.
Aloha.
My name is Sovereign Duarte. I'm from Heia. I am so honored to be here today to share my testimony. This is a picture of me when I was younger, and I've been testifying on this issue since I was 6 years old. Because I've always wanted to be a midwife trained in traditional practices. As a native Hawaiian, I want to make sure that my generation has choices to choose who attends their birth and make sure that we have a choice to become a midwife. I attended the week-long hearing in the court, which was led by the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation, and it made me feel very sad to see how we as Native Hawaiians have to fight for our traditions to simply exist and not be criminalized. It should not be this way. Please support this bill for my generation. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Mahalo for coming up here. Liko Martin.
Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
I'm happy to be here. Really a privilege, actually, to be invited to come here and speak. I've delivered children of my own. When this issue came up, I was at home supporting all of the midwives who were down at the Capitol. The more, the better. And it doesn't mean telling people what their kuleana can be and what it cannot be. You think you know my history with what has happened here politically in Hawaii? Legitimacy of the state is still a question. And we all know that answer. And when this issue was picked up and it was taken to Geneva 2 years ago, I was really happy about that. Because we've always looked for protection. Where is our oversight? Who's going to protect them? And this issue went to Geneva because it deservedly was an issue of who's kuleana, what has happened, who is doing this in our territory. And I say the more the better because my last daughter, I've had 4 my children. The last one, it was my studies. I lived on the road, had to live on the road because it was too politically active against what was happening. So I left. And if it wasn't for the training that was provided to me, I would not have been able to know how to wrap the cord off my daughter's neck when she was born. I'm not saying I know anything. I know very, very little, but the people that I have seen and working with, for them, everything from walking and everything you can do to bring food to families that cannot have the right food. This is about taking care of life, Kuleana. And so this is something that is it the Kuleana of the state of Hawaii, the legislature? It was not invited here. In 1959, it was imposed here. We haven't had our opportunity to reestablish ourselves so that we can bring back all the things that have been denied from us. And it's learning so much here with the Kuleana about, back in the time of our kupunas before, when they were licensed, they were trained. And that's what the thing is about. Whose house is this? So hats off to you folks to allow this issue support. And just the best to all the mothers and the fathers going forward. Right now is the issue of who can afford to even have a child. Where can you have a child? Now it's going after the practice. There's bigger issues than that. But this is the hit bottom, so I say, ole, put their limo inside our business. It's not their business. And so, mahalo. Nice to see some of you. And, home out to the lahui, man. That's all I say. We need more children. Like Auntie Emma she would be saying, you see that there? She was saying that during the time of Kaho'olawe, don't forget to keep the lahui going. Okay? So we need birth practices. We need places to give birth. We need our country back. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next up on the signed up list is Pi'ilani Schneider Baruya.
Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
Mahalo for taking the time to listen to us. Man, plenty energy moving through, but I came with notes. I'm not going to read my notes, and I'm going to speak from my heart. I am a student midwife. I am Native Hawaiian. I have been studying under majority of the midwives on this moku for the last 2.5 years. I'm on a specific route to becoming a midwife. There's 2 pathways. There's a PEP process, which is a portfolio examination process, and then there's a MEEK process, which you attend a nationally recognized institution, all of which are on the continental United States, to sit for a national exam. Those that take the PEP process, those that take the MEEK process, both sit for the same exam. And I will submit all of the requirements that are asked of me in a portfolio, and I get watched over by the midwives that are approved of by the National Association of Registered Midwives, to know what I need to know to be competent in caring after women and their children surrounding birth. As of right now, the law writes that those like myself who are PEP acknowledged, nationally acknowledged, certified midwives cannot apply for a licensure here in Hawaii. And now we're not rewriting the laws here. Like 25 other states accept and recognize those that have gone the PEP route. So that's one of my testimonies today, is that those like myself going the PEP route should be able to qualify for a state licensure for midwifery. Secondly, as a Native Hawaiian, I grew up being raised by my tutu, and she raised me in the old ways. She was born at home, and she raised me that everything is ceremony, everything is pule. And man, to take away the rights of a woman to choose where she's gonna birth her baby, it's kind of horrible, you know. So there is a time and a place for birth in all locations. I'm very grateful for the modern medical system because they do have life-saving techniques that are necessary, but that does not mean that every birth needs to be in a hospital. I just came off of a 30-hour labor, sitting at the hands and the feet and the hips of a woman laboring for 30 hours at home. This is not something that we take lightly. Like, we want to know everything that is necessary to sit at the hands and the feet and the hips and the portal that opens to allow this next generation to come through. This isn't something where we're trying to not know how to be the best that we can be for the next generation so that women can birth safely at home. We're not being negligent. We are trained to know that when it's medically necessary, we change locations. We're not trying to be like, oh no, we don't want to be in a hospital because we're Hawaiian. No, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to allow those that want to give birth at home to give birth at home. Okay, so I was thinking about this when I was driving here today, and it's perfect because that's reminding me right there. Let's say that's the hokulea. Let's say that's our ancient sailing practices. Oh, we get computers and engines now. No, you can't sail the ocean in the old ways. You can't learn how to sail the ocean in the old ways. We allow ourselves to learn these old practices, these ancient practices, because they are necessary. Imagine if one day all of this is taken away from us. How are we going to relate with one another? How are we going to operate with one another? We have to know the ways of the old. I mean, ikawama mu, ikawama hope, right? Like, there is that polelo no eau to remind us that we are always a bridge of time. We are the bridge of time, right? We are our ancestors and we are the future as well, based off of how we choose to move through our days and the choices that we make. And then for all of those that are not on the PEP process, I stand with them as well. We should have the right as Native Hawaiians to practice hanau practices. Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo.
Mahalo. Do we have any others that would like to testify in person? Any other ones signed up to testify? Okay. Okay, if we could have those presenters come and join us up here on the table. Mahalo.
Okay, mahalo. Aloha, everyone. I'm just doing a very brief introduction of everyone who's going to do this presentation right now. So my name is Laulani Teal, and I am a birth worker and also a la'aulapa'au person and a public health person, and who's been organizing and working on this issue for quite some time. This is Christy Duarte. She is the wonderful organizer of the Hawaii Home Birth Hui, who has worked with hundreds of mamas and practitioners. And of course, our dear attorney sister, Kirsha, who is from the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation and has been one of the wonderful attorneys leading this legal effort to protect our Hanau practices. So mahalo. And we'll start with Christy.
Aloha. Is there any way we could put the PowerPoint up on the screen, please? It was a slideshow.
Oh, which one did you want to put up on the screen? Was that provided
It was
previously?
emailed to Mark directly.
We're looking for that one. Thank you.
If not, we can move on. Okay, without it, possibly.
Yeah.
Do you want to present on this in the meanwhile? What's on the screen? Do you have anything more to speak on this one?
Do we want to share on this right now, or just move into the?
Why don't we go ahead and go through
Okay.
what you have since
Okay, well, thank you for having all of us here today. Appreciate this opportunity. Basically, the gist of it is today we are asking for your support for a bill that will protect Native Hawaiian traditional and customary birthing practices. So, to give you a little bit of history, despite criminalization of midwifery in the 20th century, at-home birth was common in Hawaii. In 1998, though, that's when laws that prohibited the care expired. And once again, traditional practitioners were now allowed to attend births. So from 1998 until 2019, a cultural renaissance in birth work took place. Now, in 2019, you kind of heard about HRS 457J. Well, this is a law that now was passed and required licensure for midwives. While allowing licensure for midwives can be a positive step forward, I want to share with you 4 ways this current law has brought extreme harm to the community. Number 1, an exemption was in place for birth attendants, but it expired in July 2023, meaning our traditional practitioners are now subject to criminalization. Number 2, while there is an exemption for Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices, the court found this summer, which we will hear from Native Hawaiian Legal Corp, that this current exemption does not effectively protect. Number 3, the current law restricts pathways, like we heard from PE, to obtain a license for midwifery. Right now, out of 40 licensed midwives, 0 are Native Hawaiian, and 1 is born and raised from here. Lastly, the Attorney General clarified in January that many different birth professionals, so doulas, lactation consultants, cultural practitioners, family members, and even grandmas are subject to civil and criminal penalties.
Mahalo, Christy. Oh, mahalo, Christy. Aloha nui kako. As you heard from Laulani, my name is Kirsha Durant. I'm the litigation director at the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation. And as they referenced, there was a lawsuit that was filed in February of this year, and that was done by the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation in partnership with the Center for Reproductive Rights and another law firm, Perkins Coie. And this lawsuit was filed along with a request for a preliminary injunction. And this was done on behalf of several plaintiffs, which included cultural practitioners of traditional birthing practices. That case is Kaho'ohano versus State of Hawaii, if any of you wanted to look it up further. This lawsuit challenges Hawaii Revised Statute 457J, which, as you heard from Christy just now, that is the law that regulates the practice of midwifery. And the law defines midwifery in a very specific way, but it is very broad. And it includes conduct that our cultural practitioners engage in. In addition to filing a lawsuit that challenged that, as I mentioned, we did submit or file a preliminary injunction request. And the reason for that is we were asking that the court block the imposition of the penalties, which are civil and criminal penalties, that could be imposed against those practicing midwifery. And that was because we argued that these were unconstitutional. So what that means for cultural practitioners is we were saying that this law, as it is written, violates Article 12, Section 7, which I'm sure we all are familiar with, that says that the state of Hawaii has a duty to affirmatively protect traditional and customary practices. But that protection, it is subject to regulation by the state. So the focus of the case and the focus of the preliminary injunction with respect to cultural practitioners was whether or not this law reasonably regulated that practice, meaning did this law comport with our understanding and the application of Article 12, Section 7. So this past June, there was a hearing. It was 4 days long. The court heard from approximately 20 witnesses, and all of them provided information about their experience and the impact that this law has had on them. This was a preliminary injunction hearing, so this was not a trial. Again, this was a hearing to determine whether or not the effect or penalties of this law should be in place while the case is pending. That standard, it's important to understand what the standard is because that highlights why the court's ruling is so significant. The standard for a preliminary injunction is that the plaintiffs, so that's us, have to be able to demonstrate that they are likely to prevail on the merits of the case, meaning they are likely to prove in a trial that this violates the constitutional protections of Article 12, Section 7. That also the balance of irreparable harm that the plaintiffs would face weigh in favor of granting the injunction, meaning that if we don't grant this injunction, the plaintiffs will suffer irreparable harm. And finally, that the public interest supports granting the injunction. And on July 23rd, after hearing from all of those witnesses, considering all of the evidence that was presented, the court did grant a preliminary injunction that blocked imposition of the law's penalties against Native Hawaiian cultural practitioners. And I want to read some language from the court's decision. First, it was a statewide injunction. So it blocks the state from enforcing penalties under this law against individuals who practice, teach, and learn palikeiki, ho'ohanau, and hanau practices, meaning traditional Native Hawaiian healing practices of prenatal, maternal, and child care. And the court specifically framed it that way because, as you've heard from some of those that have testified already, this is a practice that needs to continue. And the way that it gets continued is that there are people who are able to practice, those people are able to teach, and there are people that are able to learn. So just engaging in the practice alone is not sufficient to ensure that this practice continues in perpetuity. Additionally, in this ruling, the court noted that this law, in its text, says that nothing in this law shall prohibit healing practices by traditional Hawaiian healers engaged in traditional healing practices of prenatal, maternal, and child care as recognized by any council of kupuna recognized by Papaololokahi. And that further in the law, it says that nothing in the law shall limit, alterize, or otherwise adversely impact this practice pursuant to the state's constitution. And why that's important is because even though this law said that, what the court's direct language from the ruling is that this promise has held untrue. There was an immense burden created and irreparable harm to the plaintiffs in this case that are cultural practitioners, some of which you've heard from already and will hear from today. and those that were similarly situated to them. So in granting this injunction, the court was stating that this injunction remains in place until there is a pathway that materializes for cultural practitioners to be protected. So that's really important because there are potential ways for practitioners to be protected, but what the court did during this hearing is it evaluated the information that was provided by practitioners who had undertaken significant efforts to try to continue practicing without the threat of criminal or civil penalties. And what the court found was, despite those efforts, they were unable to be adequately protected. And so in finding that the injunction was necessary, the court was also holding that the current recognition practice or process, that's outlined in this law, in practice, it's unconstitutional. And I want to be very clear about that. The court was not saying that the idea of kupuna councils and papo'ololokahi, that process, that's unconstitutional. The court did not say that, and that wasn't argued. What the court said was that in practice here, we have a period of time where practitioners are unable to be recognized through that process. And that means that practitioners are going to be unable to practice, which ultimately means that there is a threat to the practice itself. Essentially, this law creates a chilling effect. It threatens the extinction of these practices. It violates Article 12, Section 7 of our state constitution. And I want to note that when the court was thinking about the irreparable harm, which it had to consider in determining whether or not to grant the injunction, the court looked at things like not only the inability of practitioners to practice, but the loss of ike kupuna while this law has been pending. That since July of 2023, when the birth attendant exemption expired, that we had the loss of kupuna that had deep knowledge about birthing practices, and that kupuna was unable to continue sharing that knowledge for fear of criminal and civil penalties. The court also looked at how this law and its inability to provide protection to cultural practitioners actually harms the health, safety, well-being, and culture of cultural practitioners and our community. And that was why the court found that it actually was in the public interest to grant this injunction. But also, the court had to consider, with respect to the harm, it was a balancing. The court did consider whether or not there were claims about the lack of safety if cultural practitioners are not recognized through some formal way. But the court actually found that there was no evidence presented by the state of Hawaii in defense of this law. There was no evidence presented that there was any harm to any birthing mamas as a result of not having licensing for cultural practitioners. So the final thing that I just want to note is that being a cultural practitioner and being exempt through the Kupuna Council process is just one way that cultural practitioners could be recognized and protected under this law. As you heard from Pi'ilani, another way is to follow the educational programs that are also set out in the law. But the court looked at that as well, and the court said that those processes for cultural practitioners who are protected, whose practices are protected under our Constitution, are unreasonable, because they require that you go away to the continent for education. They require learning a Western approach to this practice that doesn't comport all the time with traditional and cultural ways of knowing and being and conducting this practice. So essentially, it could be unnecessary for those who are pursuing cultural practices through a traditional pathway. And that's significant because these are the same programs that impact other traditional midwives who are not Hawaiian or not cultural practitioners. They're still subject to going through those untenable and difficult pathways to try to be licensed. You know, my kuleana today is really to just provide the legal backdrop so that this board understands what has been advocated for in the court system and where we are at with respect to this injunction being granted. The case is not Pau. The trial is set for January of 2026. So this is the backdrop and the climate within which Christy and Naulani are here to ask OHA to consider its request. Mahalo for the opportunity.
What's that? Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess I should leave mine on. I guess I had it.
Okay, mahalo. Board Chair Lindsay?
So, forgive my ignorance, but I know that we were actively involved in another issue in the legislature last year, not this year. And you folks were very active, and in the end, you didn't get what you wanted. Now, what were you asking for then? Please share.
Yeah, so the reason this year is so important is because someone did mention that there's a sunset date to the law. So the law will actually expire June 30th, 2025. So this is the perfect time with the court trial pending in 2026. The 2025 expiration date allows for better legislation and language to move forward that will expand access, and continue the licensure program. We want to continue it, but we also want to be able to still allow our Native Hawaiian families the right to choose who is at their birth, and also protect Native Hawaiian traditional and customary practices, incorporate the birth practitioners, and not criminalize our family. So what was being asked
Yes.
was for the birth attendant exemption, which actually is a form of regulation. They are required to give informed disclosure. They have forms they have to give to their client. They have to disclose all their education and training, and they have to keep the form for 10 years in case the DCCA asks for it. And so we're asking for that birth attendant exemption to continue.
Yeah.
But now with this sunset date, we have the opportunity to put forward language that will stop criminalization and allow, for everyone to be able to practice and have a choice.
Mahalo, I see that we're not being provided this, so thank you. It's being distributed, members. Yes, Trustee Galataria.
Chair, can I ask a question? Oh, okay. First of all, this is about as deep as it gets. And for myself, I'm so grateful for you folks to come and everybody who's testified in front of us. I have a couple of questions, 30,000 feet and down to the ground game. So can you tell us what's the current process of certification of, and is there a time of education required before graduating into the certification?
So the current pathway to licensure allows for two different types of midwives, but both are clinical types of trainings.
What about the Hawaiian training?
Oh,
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, you got to turn it.
I should mention that I did have a part of the presentation too, so I think that this is I haven't done that part yet, but I will say that for Hawaiian traditional practices, as in any kind of Hawaiian traditional practice, whether it's building a canoe or hula or attending birth or medicine, as la'au lapa'au, as I've been trained in. You are trained when your kumu says you are. Yeah. So in some cases, it takes a lifetime. Sometimes it's not until the kumu passes that you are certified. Sometimes it is when they feel that you're ready, so traditionally, I think that's a basic standard throughout all of our cultural traditions. When it comes to attending births, we should remember that we are in right now a period of where there has been a renaissance of hanau practices that has taken place since they became legal in 1998 to the point where they became illegal again in 2019. So during that period, a lot of midwives were trained, many of whom, like myself, kind of had to go with things that we learned from other kumu. Like for me, I had La'au Lapa'au training with Papa Henry Awai, and my and others, other teachers. However, those teachers, while those teachings are extremely important, the things that really helped me to piece back together my ancestral traditions that had been broken were sometimes they were Haole midwives, sometimes they were others who knew little bits about this practice. So I'm just saying that in the era that we're in, just in the same way that voyaging traditions were pieced back together from having been fragmented, we worked with kupuna, with those who still held the knowledge. You know, we have a cultural council of kupuna. We worked with also other practitioners who had some traditional knowledge from various cultures. We worked and put it all together and in the ways that we said, and just kept doing it. You know, kept attending the births, kept helping the people. And so just to kind of give a picture of sometimes it's necessity, but a lot of times traditionally, if you want to talk about traditional practice, it is when your kumu says you are ready now, or in some cases when your community says, yes, you may practice. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking to return the ability for our community to make its own determinations, to build its own systems of safety and standards of care.
Follow up. Are there any other best practice models in other indigenous peoples that we can model, that we can duplicate? And if so, do we have to remain separate from the existing bureaucracies, or can we embed this process in an existing division of the current government, i.e. Department of Health, Department of Social Services? Do we have that capacity if given the opportunity?
So I will say, yes, there are models in indigenous cultures. There are definitely wonderful practitioners in Alaska, for example, and also Canada and other places in other Pacific islands as well. However, I think that it is important to remember that there's a really wide spectrum of practices that we're talking about. Yeah. And they go all the way from practices that that are Western trained, and that doesn't mean that they're not cultural, because people will bring their culture into that, just as some Kanaka doctors will bring that culture into it. But it's a Western trained model of care, and those folks would do really well with licensure, as Sister Pi'ilani talked about, and at the same time that it goes all the way to practices that are completely traditional practices, and those practices that are really traditional cultural practices, I'm going to say it has never been shown that the regulation by the state of deeply cultural practices has ever worked very well in any capacity. And my teacher, Papa Henry Awai, when I want to give a little shout out to my sisters from Papa Ololokahi that I see there, because I think that they have also done great work, in this tradition, in keeping these traditions going. And part of that what came from a statement in 1998, and at that time I was a student of Papa Awai, and at that time he was the convener of a number of kupuna who all came together and made a statement because licensure of kahuna practices was being proposed at the legislature at the time. And they made a statement. It's a very clear and awesome statement that a lot of Papaololokahi's work has been based on, which says that we are instruments of Keakua, and only Keakua can certify or license a practitioner. And it is not appropriate for the state to do so in a cultural practice. So that was their mandate. And these are all of the great healers, most of the great well-known healers of that time. You know, it was Auntie Margaret Machado, Papa Kalua, you know, pretty much all of that generation were there and signed on to this statement. So I just want to be really clear that as far as the cultural practices, and I think that Kershaw really covered this, that the traditional cultural practices need the protection of law, you know, not necessarily regulation. We have our own systems of regulation, just like any cultural practice has its very strict systems of regulation. Whereas there are, you know, when you talk about the Western practices, those practices there is a pathway, that PEP pathway, that can and is used in some indigenous communities for sure, to train Western trained midwives who are really awesome in many parts of the community. So not everybody wants a full on, you know, cultural, traditional birth. We have a whole spectrum, and our Kanaka families need that entire spectrum. They need to be able to choose anyone along that spectrum to be able to have the safest and healthiest and most self-determined hanao possible.
Mahalo for that. Thank you, Jim.
Mahalo. Members, any other questions or comments? Joyce, if you'd please continue, thank you.
Mahalo. So I did just want to give a brief timeline, because I think it's very important, and also just very briefly, because I also have a public health background, that's another thing that I do. And so I want to very briefly touch on that timeline that we're in, and also the safety issues that are facing our Kanaka, because they're very important. So I'd like to start with the concept of hanao itself, because a lot of the discussion in this over this issue has been over the practice of midwifery. And in our cultural view, as someone who's trained in these practices, hanao itself is the central practitioner is the mother, the person who hanaus. And that goes all the way back in all of our genealogies, all of our Kanaka genealogies. It goes all the way back to Paul, you know, that for all the way back to the Kumulipo, that there's this birth, and that birth gives birth, gives birth, gives birth, gives birth, and goes through all of time, all of the great history of our people through the entire kingdom, where we need to remember that every single person was born either by a midwife or, you know, until 1890, when Kapiolani Maternity Hospital opened up and had 6 births in 1890, that until that point, everyone in the kingdom was born either at home or with some kind of practice. And most of those practices have been passed down. Generally speaking, you know, in some ways, they're the kahuna practices that are passed down through training, through rigorous formal training. And then there are also the people's practices that are passed down from mother to daughter to daughters, you know, because those birth stories, that training, that immersive cultural training happens not only to the next person giving birth, but to the whole community who supports that birth. And that is very, very important, because to switch over to my public health mode right now, our maternal death rate is terrible. Our mothers are dying. And I'm not sure if you, I know I've seen it in the packet that is for this meeting. The CDC data shows that the last available CDC data shows that we, as Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, have the single highest maternal mortality rate in all of the United States, higher than the Black population, higher than Native Americans. That is how high our death rates are. And these are maternal death rates, none of which are associated with home birth. And the reason that they're dying is because they're not in a space where they can communicate, first of all, and because there's no follow-up. There's no access to real care. And those are the things that our cultural training addresses. Our cultural training brings in the families. It brings these things together. It's actually a solution. I'm not saying that everybody has to have a baby at home, but the culture that's involved is very, very important. And that culture is practiced through this. And I'm sure that you can hear a lot of people talk about that. My teacher, besides Papa Awai, my other teacher, very great mentor in public health as I was going through my master's program, was Dr. Kekuni Blaisdell. And his main focus on why our people are dying as a whole is a lack of ea, a lack of self-determination. You know, and he's got all kinds of wonderful texts about that I really encourage people to read. Yes, they're kind of old, but they're awesome. And I think we included some of them. So it's very, very important in restoring this ea that we make sure that every angle that our people need to access is available to them, and that all of these things are covered. I want to, you know, be in our time that we came from Po, that these traditions have been passed on and on and on. I do want to say that we ran into some resistance, and that resistance first started in the kingdom. It first started in 1865, where the pressure came in the kingdom legislature to basically exterminate cultural practices. At that time, of course, birth was still legal, but healing practices started to become basically persecuted, you know, and to become illegal, to make kahuna go through a licensing process. However, there is no record of any kahuna being licensed during that period. So in 1868, the kingdom passed a law that recognized the healers and that exempted them from that requirement that wasn't really being enforced anyway. But in the 1890s, as the fervor against the kingdom built up, there was an anti-healer fervor. And in an 1891 article, you know, they were called, this was US settlers primarily, that were calling these dangerous practices of healing and spirituality. And so in that 1891 article, they said, it says, kahunadom must be discredited and then it may die out. It cannot be stamped by force unless it was possible to convict a dozen or so kahunas of manslaughter. So there was this anti-kahuna thought that after the events of 1893, they started actually persecuting and jailing kahuna, the healers. And after that, the territory in 1919, the Territory Medicine Board began to issue licenses to Hawaiian practitioners, but they included things like a written exam listing the plants in Latin. So basically, they were essentially trying to not allow those practices to continue. So at the same time, there was a lot of fervor against traditional birth. And like I said, 6 children were born at Kapiolani in 1890, but by 1920, they were already trying to, the OBs had been campaigning, and there's a lot of documentation of this from 1910 to 1920. The territorial OBs tried to eliminate birthing practices and specifically midwifery. So in 1921, the first law to license was implemented. In 1931, a clampdown started to happen against birthing practitioners. It required registration. And 1941, there was a law that made it illegal to practice midwifery with a license and without a license. And they did license a number of practitioners, but not one single Kanaka, just like today. So basically, this repression continued until 1989. What happened was that a law sunsetted, and then CNM, a certified nurse midwife licensure, was instituted in 1989. And when that law sunset in 1998, they inadvertently made these practices legal again. Now, I'm going to say, I have a child who was born in 1993 during the period of illegality, which is where we're at again. And had it not been for underground midwives who were still continuing these practices, I don't know what would have happened, because I probably would have given birth on my own, so I just want to keep that okay. And so I just want to kind of bring us up to that gate. So so you have that background, that the from 1998 until 2000, until 2019, there's this renaissance of Hanau practices, and you're seeing the product over here of all these young women who've been trained and are working in their communities as midwives and serving the Hawaiian people. And it's very, very, very important. And I just want to emphasize how, in terms of safety, in terms of real safety, if you want to look at data, I won't take your time to do that, but we could look at the data. There is no association between bad outcomes and home birth, or between traditional practices. There is no association, but there is lots and lots of association of negative outcomes and death because of these practices being repressed. So I'm just going to leave it there. But, I just really urge people to please consider, please trustees, support this bill. It is a comprehensive bill that supports everybody. The licensure pathway with an availability for our Kanaka to be able to access that, and the protection of the traditional practices. So we need all of it, and I really thank you for your time. Mahalo.
Mahalo. That's the ending of the presentation. We'll move on to the next one. Mahalo for being here and sharing your mana'o and your work. Mahalo nui. Okay, now we will move on to new business under letter A we'll now move under to Roman numeral number 3, new business under section B. Nathan, are there any testifiers for this item? Virtual testifiers?
Yes, the committee would like to call Kiani Rollins Fernandez.
Okay. Is Kiani on? Aloha, Kiani.
Aloha, okay, let's see. Aloha ho. Mahalo for making me a panelist so that my video can work. Okay, aloha mai. Ova o Kiani Rollins Fernandez, Maui County Council Member Kiani Rollins Fernandez. Mahalo for this opportunity to provide testimony in strong support of BAE 2404 to provide OHA support for a 2025 bill for increased access and protection of traditional and customary birth practices as proposed by Ea Hano. Mahalo for scheduling this item and for your consideration to include this as a priority. Last year, I introduced Resolution 2338, 23-38 that our council unanimously adopted as its official position of the Maui County Council. It urged the state legislature to enact a statute permanently exempting birth attendants from state licensure requirements and to enact a statute expanding licensure eligibility to include all certified professional midwives, including those who have been certified via the portfolio evaluation process pathway. As Ms. Duarte explained earlier, with everyone aligned, the courts, OHA, the councils, perhaps we will have the necessary pressure on the specific legislators who have been blocking this effort. In OHA's Mana'i Mauliola 15-year strategic plan for 2025, it defines one of OHA's roles as an advocate, stating, as an advocate, OHA speaks rights and acts in favor of effective policy development, including changing of laws and strengthening implementation of policies and practices that impact the foundation and direction outlined in the organizational strategic plan. Advocates also monitor and evaluate policies, garner public support for causes through community outreach efforts. The strategic plan goes on to identify the second of OHA's 4 directions as health outcomes, stating supporting initiatives, leveraging partnerships, engaging in strategic strategies to promote healthy and strong families. Identifying the strategic outcomes as strengthen OEV, ea aina momona pilina vai ke kua amana. Strategy 3 advance priorities, programs, and practices that strengthen Hawaiian well-being, including physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional health. And strategy 4 advance policy, program, and practices that strengthen the health of the Aina and Mo'omehe. This request that OHA support a bill at the legislature aligns This request that OHA supports a bill at the Hawaii State Legislature to 1, continue the license program for CPM and CMs and adds a training pathway that local student midwives can access, exempts cultural practitioners, traditional birth attendants, and extended families from licensure and protects them from criminalization. And 3, creates a task force to develop further solutions. This aligns with OHA's role as an advocate. It articulates strategies articulated strategies and directional outcome. I ask myself, how did we get to a place where Indigenous and traditional birth attendants are at risk of being criminalized, forced to seek injunctive relief through the courts for protection? The fact is that capitalism fears any process that it can't capitalize off of. And for as long as it's been able to dominate the Western world, and as long as the Western world controls our Indigenous spaces due to imperialism, we will suffer. Capitalism has fought to kill the spirit of all things that give life, that you shouldn't put a price on, including our wahine, our indigeneity, our ohana, who want to exist in the life paths of our ancestors. Our life paths take us to the most simple but critical aspects of life, like breathing, hano mai, hano aku, our first breath in at birth and our last breath out at death. The transition into the world is sacred, as is the transition out. The imprint we leave lives in the iere that is planted
and the change and the fruit of the tree that grows over the ieve. The iwi that are then planted after we cross over change the vibration of that aina that forever feeds our ancestors spiritually in the same way the fruit that grows from the ieve feeds us physically. These are all sacred. They are the evidence that we lived, and they are the legacy of our continuity as humans who reach back to our ancestors and forward to our descendants in perpetuity. I see that I have 25 seconds left, so I will go toward the end. In my own community on Molokai, to beyond her shores, families have proven that home birth is safe, that birthing with traditional midwives is safe, and that regardless of the absurdity of outlawing Indigenous and traditional knowledge, families will continue to choose birthing at home with those that make them feel safe. Mai kahikina I kala, I kumukahi a kavelana, I kala lehua. From the sunrise at Kumukahi to the fading sunlight at Lehua, Eola. I ask you folks to adopt this. Mahalo.
Nathan, next testifier, please.
Next, the committee would like to call Rebecca Stewart Botello.
Hello.
Aloha, Rebecca.
Aloha, thank you again. I think when I checked to testify, there were 4 options and I chose 2 of them as they referred to requesting that OHA support legislation for supporting all traditional midwives and hanau practitioners. And I didn't realize that I would probably be sharing the same thing, so I'll keep my comments pretty brief. There was one thing that I didn't get to express the first time that I shared about an hour ago, which is one thing that affects me personally. Like I said, I've been a birth worker for 24 years. 8 of those years was apprenticing under my mom. Her name is Dr. Mari Stewart. My father, Pastor Kahu Russell Stewart, he spoke today as well. But I had 8 years under her, and I had 16 years now of helping to support women and families in their time of birth. And in all of those 16 years, I have had a 100% success rate with helping women deliver vaginally and with no difficulties whatsoever, some in the home and some at hospitals. My mom's track record for 40 plus years, almost 50, is also equally impeccable. And she has had no adverse maternal outcomes, no adverse infant outcomes in all of the births that she has served at. But it's pretty wild for me to watch my mom for the last 2 years sit on the side and have person after person after person come and ask if she can assist them at birth. And people that she's done maybe 2 or 3 births for, and they are saying, Dr. Mari, could you please help us with our baby number 4 or number 5? And she says, I'm sorry, based on the laws that exist, I don't feel it's prudent to do that because of the threat of prosecution. I have a 10-year-old daughter, an 11-year-old son, and a 13-year-old son. All of them have seen me run off to births at all times of day and come back at all times of day and night. And birth is natural, traditional, religious birth is part of their culture, their history as my children and as my mom's mo'opuna. And when I read through these laws, and I've been a pretty active part of voicing our concerns as community members to our legislature, and I've knocked on doors and I've sat with legislators and I've had doors slammed in my face, and I've taken my children. They have practically lived at the state capitol for most of their life because we have been fighting this issue for as long as my daughter has been alive. And to find out that when my daughter or when my sons decide to become parents, that so long as things are the way they are right now, my mom cannot help my children. Their own kupuna wahine cannot help them. And it just is really, if I'm just speaking from my heart, I'm not reading from a script. I literally have no notes in front of me. But I think, how is that possible that I have to testify again and again and again, year after year, knocking on doors, signing petitions, begging people to come and testify at the legislature or here at OHA or anywhere, or to send in their testimonies via email or whatnot, just so that I know that my daughter and my sons and my niece and my nephew, should they decide that they want their grandma there at their birth, that they can have her there without fear of penalty. I'm just I'm pretty flabbergasted, but I'm also hopeful. I'm very hopeful that the combined efforts, as the lovely lady before me from Maui, the councilwoman from Maui, as she was sharing, that all of our combined efforts can be enough to sway people who have really dug in their heels and said, no matter what, we are going to give people in the Western society the right to dictate what happens here, in Hawaii culturally. And I hope that our legislators will hear the OHA board and everyone else's voices collectively to support the cultural practices of birth here. And yes, it's not about the midwife, really. It's not about the birth practitioners. It's about the moms and the dads that are bringing their children into this world. So thank you so much.
Mahalo. Next testifier, please, Nathan.
The committee calls Makalani Franco Francis.
Okay, I don't see Makalani on. If Makalani comes on after, then we can hear Makalani. Next one, please.
Next would be Pua o Ele Ili Pinto.
Aloha, Pua.
Aloha, I already testified and it's pretty just similar. Like if you could, I think the people that have testified already have put their point ready there, so I don't want to waste any more time. But mahalo for the opportunity.
Mahalo. Next testifier.
Next, the committee calls on Dr. Russell Stewart. Oh,
He's not on. Okay, is Makalani on now? Let's see Makalani. Okay, we'll move on now to in-person testimony.
Oh.
Yes, 3 more? Okay.
The committee calls on Elijah McShane.
Aloha, Elijah, are you on?
Composition to be included in the 2025 OHA legislative package as provided in attachment C.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments, members? Seeing none, can I please have a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Galataria, Trustee Lindsay,
Aye.
Trustee Souza, Trustee Waihe'e,
Yes.
Chair Akaka.
Aye.
6 yes votes.
All right, moving on to motion 4. And before we do so, I would like administration to explain what this is.
Similar to the motion that we had you folks entertain for the budget bill, this bill is this motion allows administration to do any editing, cleanup of the bill, non-substantive though. Yeah, that's what this motion allows us to do. Edit, formatting.
So does this come back before the board before it goes out?
No, this would allow us to just make those updates based on, yeah, that's what this would do. But again, we wouldn't change the content. It would just be any cleanup that we'd have to do, formatting. So remember, this is gonna go to the LRB. I'm learning, Legislative Reference Bureau. So it's, yeah, I don't know, any grammatical stuff, spelling, formatting. We're gonna add the, when we add the number, the HB number, all of that.
Well, I don't think it would matter for you folks to pass it through us as you send it to them,
Oh, yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I
we
seem
would
to
share
have
it.
felt Trustee Trask's concern this morning. So,
We
I
would
mean,
definitely
press a
share.
button and it comes to all of us and,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I don't think that's a problem. We just want to be able to make the changes without having to
Yeah.
bring it back for you guys to approve. But we will definitely be transparent and keep you folks in the loop as far as what the final bills look like before submission. Yeah. And we would flag you folks if something came up that would change it. And like, yeah. Yeah. But that's all this motion is. We're covering.
Any other questions or comments, members? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna?
Who moved this again?
Yeah.
Oh, Kalamai.
Who moved it?
Whew, many motions.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to move to approve amending measures as needed to make appropriate technical, ministerial, and non-substantive edits for style, clarity, consistency, and accuracy for final submission to the 2025 legislative session. This includes preamble language for framing and editorial purposes as needed, titles of measures for strategic and clarifying reasons, and labeling each measure for tracking. Mahalo.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments, members? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna?
No.
Trustee Galatario?
Aye.
Board Chair Lindsay?
Aye.
Trustee Souza? Trustee Wahehe?
Yes.
Chair Akaka?
Aye.
5 yes votes, 1 no, 3 excuse. Motion passes.
Mahalo. Now moving on to motion 5. Administration, if you can please explain that as well.
Hi. So this is just a motion to approve OHA's participation in any coordinated community advocacy efforts. So this would be considered like the non-package activities. So OHA named bills, where potentially we may have hopefully Mauna Ala Hakuone at Kaka'ako Makai come up. Things that ceded lands that impact Native Hawaiians. So that's what this is. But I don't consider this a blind approval because we would need to come back to the board to discuss after all the bills come out in January and present that back to you folks. That's the matrix, I guess, that we use for tracking. And so it would have anything that is OHA named, bills that we didn't propose, and then bills that impact our lahui, and specifically in these areas.
Mahalo. Any other questions or comments, members? Okay.
Wait, yeah, yes. So,
Yes, Trustee Huna.
so how does this bill support our beneficiaries again?
It's not a bill, it's just a motion to participate in coordinated community advocacy efforts. So it's just saying, yes, we want to be engaged and be a part of any efforts not being introduced by OHA. Yeah, like the midwifery is an example where OHA has supported. Yeah, but is that clear? So this is not a bill. This is just a motion to say, yes, we're gonna, be a part of advocacy efforts that impact OHA directly or that impact Native Hawaiians. But again, we gave some potential, like some examples of where that may happen. Midwifery being the first one that came up earlier at the start of this meeting. Mauna Ala, we anticipate will be introduced. Hakuone at Kaka'ako Makai is another one. But we don't have the specifics yet. After the bills come out and we review and put the non-package activities together, then that would come back to the board for approval. Like on the
So,
positions that we want to take on the different bills.
So this is just to say that you guys can do your job. This is like your job. I mean, is that what we're asking? I mean, let's be clear because
Yes,
this is your
yes.
job and you're just asking, I gotta do my job, you know? I mean,
Well,
am I
we
saying it
will
wrong?
make you have our backs and say, yes, go for it. No, but again, we would come back in January to share the specifics of what that is. But yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, we could come back.
Would anybody like to read that?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move to approve OHA's participation in 2025 coordinated community advocacy efforts in alignment with Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 10 and 10H, OHA's mission and vision, OHA's strategic plan, Mana I Mauliola's 3 strategic foundations, Ohana Mo Mehiu Aina, OHA's strategic plan, Mana I Mauliola's 4 strategic directions, educational pathways, health outcomes, quality housing, and economic stability, by BOT Series 2070, EV Kupuna BOT Series 2080, previously approved board position and resolutions with the understanding that administration will bring forward to the Committee on Beneficiary Advocacy and Empowerment 2025 state legislative matters in the normal course of established process, matrices, position changes, in addition to informing BAE members and the Board of Trustees as a whole regarding status of supports of community advocacy efforts.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments, members? Seeing none, can I please have a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Analua, sorry.
Trustee Galatario,
Aye.
Board Chair Lindsay, Trustee Souza, Trustee Wahehe,
Yes.
Chair Akaka,
Aye.
Trustee Ahuna,
Analua.
5 yes votes, 1 abstention, 3 excused. Motion passes.
Hello. All right. Now moving on to Roman numeral number 4, executive session under section A. Before we proceed, Nathan, are there any testifiers on this item?
Chair Akaka, there are no testifiers on this item.
Mahalo. May I please have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? Any interest in a second? Ole? Okay.
Second, I gave you guys 1 second. Let's get this thing over with, man. What's
Okay.
going on?
It's
Let's
been
go.
moved and seconded. Can I please have a roll call vote?
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Galatario,
Aye.
Board Chair Lindsay, Trustee Souza, Trustee Wahehe,
Yes.
Chair Akaka.
Aye.
6 yes votes. Motion
Mahalo.
passes.
I want to share that now that we are back in open session, there was a review and approval of minutes and no other further discussion. Mahalo. We are now moving on to announcements. Members, are there any announcements at this time? Seeing none, I will entertain. Yes? Okay. Mahalo. Seeing that there are no other further announcements, can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. If there are no other mana'o to be shared, I will now ask for a roll call vote to adjourn.
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Galatario.
Aye.
Board Chair Lindsay.
Aye.
Trustee Souza.
Aye.
Trustee Wahehe.
Yes.
Chair Akaka.
Aye.
6 yes votes.
Mahalo,
Motion
Nathan. The
passes.
meeting is now adjourned. Mahalo members and all in attendance to all live streaming. Ohui ho kako. Lampono.